Hello, my friends from near and far. This is so exciting. I've got two guests on here from down under, one who's sort of geographically my global neighbor, and I love the power of technology to bring all this to you. Without any further delay, let me introduce you to this amazing guest panel. Writing a book can feel endless. You start with so much excitement, and somewhere along the way, doubt creeps in. You question everything. You wonder if you'll ever actually finish. If that sounds familiar, you're in good company. Every author hits that wall at some point. What matters is pushing through it. That's what turns a dream into something real you can share with the world. And finishing your book, it's just the beginning. Getting your book into the hands of readers and making sure it works for you and your business takes strategy, partnerships, and support. You don't have to do it all alone. With the right plan, your book can open doors, spark conversations, grow your brand, and create real business opportunities. That's exactly what I help authors do. Through my strategic book launch program, we focus on building real connections, conversations, media exposure, and growth that go way beyond just selling copies. If that sounds like something you're ready for, you can schedule a brainstorming session at booklaunchbrainstorm.com. Now, let's dive in. I'm excited to introduce our panelists who are here to pull back the curtain and share what it's really like to be an author. Christina Wedgewood wrote Better, a more authentic path for the reluctant thought leader, a refreshing call to action for thoughtful, authentic voices to step into leadership, showing that true influence comes not from being the loudest in the room, but from sharing your ideas with honesty, care, and courage. Christina Blosdale wrote The Social Media and Branding Survival Guide, Digital Marketing So Irresistible, Even Your Ex Will Want to Follow You. A bold, no-fluff playbook for building an irresistible online presence, turning casual followers into raving fans, and growing your business with authenticity, swagger, and unstoppable creativity. Dr. Holton wrote Attentional Leadership, How to Drive Leaders, Visions, and Teams Forward, a powerful guide for leaders seeking to overcome burnout, strengthen resilience, and drive their teams forward by leading with greater purpose, clarity, and connection. Please join me in welcoming Christina, Christine, and Helen. Christina, I'm going to kick it off with you. Welcome to the show, and give us a little more context about the audience you had in mind when you were writing your book.
Thanks, Robbie. I wrote the book for people who I term reluctant thought leaders. So they're the people who maybe were doing great work and they have great ideas, but they're not sharing them very widely. So they're usually having a really significant impact within the circles that they work in, but the wider world or those outside of their client list, they don't get the benefit of those people's methods or thinking, and they're missing out because those things might be able to help them. So they're those who sort of, they're thought leaders in the truest sense of the word, but they may be shying away from that. And so the book was a way to encourage those people to add their contribution and also reassure them that there are authentic to them ways that they can be effective in doing that without needing to sort of become the archetype, the dominant archetype of a thought leader that we so often see.
Reluctant leader. Yeah, I could see a lot of people are really resonating with that. In fact, my old podcast was called On the Schmooze. And the first question was a two-part question. How do you define leadership? And when did you realize you had the skills to lead? And people that I had picked to be on the show because of their leadership often told me in private before the show started, I don't know if I'm really a leader. And I'm like, but wait, I mean, yes, you are. They're like, I don't know. Do I deserve to answer this question? It's amazing.
It's astounding.
Yeah. Hey, Christine, what about you? Who did you have in mind for your book?
Really, I had my clients in mind because it's really made for the overwhelmed entrepreneur, solopreneur who finds out that when they go after their passion and they want to have a business, they have to be an accountant and a marketer and a videographer and a copywriter and all these different things. And they become so overwhelmed. A lot of times they become a deer in headlights and they just either give up or they say this is too hard. And so I just wanted to give them some tips and tricks and strategies on how they can get the word out and build their expert authority through different tools, through different mechanisms like podcasts and videos and TikToks and all that great stuff. And so that's really who I was writing it for, was for my ideal client.
I love it that you had a clear sense of what was needed in the market. because these are your market. And so it'll help them find you and
Yeah.
learn from you, and then hopefully work with you if they realize they need a little extra help beyond the book. Helen, share with us again, like you've got also this leadership sort of focus, but tell us, what kind of leader were you reaching to reach for this book?
Well, glad you asked the question. The ideal reader for my book is a purpose driven leader, a person who feels disconnected, overwhelmed, or out of alignment. Yet they have a strong desire to lead better,
Mm-hmm.
better communication, more confidence, and compassion, which is really needed today. They they're leaders. What does that mean? They might be an executive, an entrepreneur, an educator, do a lot of work in public education, a ministry leader, I'm an ordained minister, or an
Mm.
emerging leader, one on the rise, seeking more than just productivity. That's not the be all end all for an intentional leader. They want deeper meaning for who they are and what they do. This is a reader who is ready to explore their unique strengths, who they are at their best, cultivate resilience. I don't know about you, but everybody needs some resilience these days. Not so much to bounce back, but to rebound when you get knocked down.
Nice.
And to lead in a way that nurtures your own well being while motivating, empowering, and adding value to others. They believe leadership isn't just about what you do, but who you are.
You know what I love is
Bottom
you're
line,
all,
the bottom line,
yep.
how you show up matters.
Mhm.
You know, the three of you are basically here based on your availability on a calendar, right? And yet I can already see a theme running through what all of you said. You're all in one way or another talked about stepping out, showing who you are, having an authentic self, um, not hiding how you could help other people, um, finding a way to bring that forward that feels good to you. Um, and also there's a playfulness that I think you, Christine, will bring to this as well. Having some fun with those TikToks, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't feel all buttoned up. Like, feel like if that's who you are, like bring that forward. I love that so much. And now, Christine, I know you've got lots of books under your belt, so I'll come to you next on this. But first, Christina and Helen, am I correct? This is your first book, or is there other books that you've written? First book.
Other than my dissertation,
Okay.
Other than my dissertation, it is my first book, though I've been a collaborative
Yep.
writer in other books.
Great. And Christina?
Same. First book with my name on the cover of
Mhm.
it, but I work in the book coaching and copy editing, etc. space. So it was about number 19 or 20
That
of
you
other
had
people's
touched in
books.
some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Christina, we're going to be leaning in on your expertise in the book space with Intelligent Ink. But let me ask Helen, writing a book there's a dissertation, which is a very academic focused, difficult thing to do, and often has a very particular way it has to be created. So I'm curious about two things. One is how you translate, to a different style of writing when you're writing this kind of book, intentional leadership, but also what voices were in your head about whether you should even bother writing this book. Like, did you have to overcome those inner voices, or did you feel really confident from the start that this is a book that you were going to create?
It was a major transition point in my life that said, I need to tell my story. I
Mm-hmm.
spent 21 years as an elected official serving on the Baltimore City Council at a time when, and I can say this now because it just happened like a couple weeks ago, I was on the city council when Freddie Gray died. It was a tipping point for what has been happening for decades. And it really hit me that leadership is more than just the boundaries with which you think this is my territory. And it forced me to a point of asking myself, how am I complicit in this atrocity happening in my city as I watched it burn up? And I decided I retired from city council at the end of the term. And that was December 2016. And I said, I got to write my book.
Mm.
Well, it took me 7 years to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And it got done. And I
got done.
think that the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. Christina, I think you probably, as a first-time author, have a unique perspective because you were not new to the world of authors and publishing books. You probably, a lot of times I talk to people who are first-time authors. They don't know any other authors when they get started, and they're really the blank slate as far as, and a lot of assumptions, a lot of myths that they're living with. You didn't have that. What led you to decide this is a book you were going to write for yourself, though, and not just collaborate or help other authors bring their books to life?
I think there were a few things. I'm not the loudest one in our business, and anyone that encounters Verity will know that very quickly off the bat. So I think for me, it was partly a way to make sure that my voice and perspective were heard within, I think bring my perspective back to the forefront as well of what we were doing. I think for the clients that we work with, there's a fire or a purpose to the impact that they want to have, and I think that there's never like a right time to do it. But when you feel that fire or you're sort of called to, you've got to answer. And I think it just, I don't know, lots of things just were pointing to the fact that it was the right time for me to write one for myself, but it was still a very different experience. And even though I thought I knew all of what was in store for me, it was a different kind of existential crisis to do it for yourself, especially when you think you know how to do this really well already.
You're going to be so much more empathetic with your clients now because you actually were in their shoes. It's one thing to kind of like be the professional, the expert, and then to be the one who's like having there's all these moments throughout the author journey where you're like, am I really the one to do this? Okay, I'm doing this. I have no idea what the next step is. Or, okay, I'm doing that, but now I have to share it with the world, right? Like there's it's different for every person. It's a little different. Christine, you have put a lot of content out and all kinds of books and all kinds of topics. Just kind of flipping through just what you have on Amazon. And it seems like you like to put out these kind of quick, narrowly focused, fun, easy to reference, easy to kind of grab onto books. A lot of authors feel like they have to write like the book, and they end up writing, I don't even know, 800-page books, right? And you're like, nah, people don't have time for that. So you've been doing this for a while, but it feels like this book's a little bit different than some of the other ones. So tell me, how did you approach this book? The one that I'm going to read is The Social Media and Branding Survival Guide. Does this feel different from you to the other ones that you were putting out and have a little more heft? I see it's got actually, it's substance. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the book.
Well, I'm really glad that you caught that. Like, you're very observant, because a lot of times people don't do that. So this is the 5th bestseller that I've written, and the first 4 were all about the power of podcasting, and not just how to create your own podcast, or why, if you're an entrepreneur or a coach, why it's so important to have that as a marketing tool, but also why you want to be a guest on podcasts and how to use that as a marketing tool as well, and how to be a good guest. That's the important thing. So those were all about podcasting. And I took a look at my own clients that I work with. I have a mastermind, I have one-on-one clients, and I do some group coaching, and they're fine with the podcast. They get that, right? But the problems that they were having were being overwhelmed by social media, because that's how they're going to reach their target audience. And their brand. And their brand, I keep telling them, and they get it now, their brand is really them. Your brand, if you're a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, it's you. It's not the car you drive. It's not the clothes you wear. It is you and your expertise and your knowledge and your wisdom that you've gained. So this particular book, it has a fond place in my heart, because it's really the core of my coaching, and giving people simple, easy, and fun. That's why the title is what it is. The subtitle, Digital Marketing So Irresistible Even Your Ex Will Want to Follow You, because that's my that's my personality, is being silly and fun. And if I teach that way, I find that my clients, they learn much quicker. They get a hold of it, the content, they understand it, and then they can be creative, and then they can, expand and grow. So that's why I wrote it. That's really the reason.
What I love is that it's really important when we create a book that we make it for a specific audience. Like I asked all of you who, right, you had in mind, and Christina was like, reluctant leaders, right? That's going to be different than a mission-driven leader, right? Like it's going to be slightly different, and people have to see themselves in the message. If it's too generic, no one sees himself. It just feels like platitudes. And reading your subtitle, it definitely is like, oh, okay. Like I know that this is, now some people are going to love that and be totally drawn and magnetized in. And others are going to be like, ooh, I just want to know where to click and like how to do the thing right. I feel like I'm not doing it right. The person who's like, I just want it proper, and you're like, oh, just have brief, they're
be
like,
messy, be messy, be silly, be messy, and
so
and don't be perfect.
Wouldn't help everybody. It's that some people are going to feel more comfortable playing with the material, and you're giving them permission and attracting them from the start. And I think I've noticed a trend for subtitles getting longer. Christina, have you noticed this? Subtitles have gotten longer. They've been like sentences now. I think it's helpful for people to like use them well. Like my new book. So I'm like right at the, I just told my wife, she said, how close to done are you with your new book? It's my 4th book. And I said, about 5% left, which could take about 8 years, give or take. So,
well, I feel like I'm in good company now.
Yeah, my book is called Launch Your Book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews That Drive Revenue. And that the subtitle is really important because it helps you know who it's for. And I think that's how we use these things, is to attract the right people in. I'm curious, Christine, for this book, did you have a different set of success metrics? Like, were you hoping for a different outcome, whether it's book sales, hitting #1, reviews, gigs being booked, something? Was there something different, given that you've already done this a bunch of other times, that you were like, for this book, this is going to be a new goal?
Well, because I always encourage my clients to use their book as a marketing tool. And really, for me, this is open doors, because I've been doing more podcast guesting than ever. A book about a podcast or podcasting itself is great, and you can talk about that till the cows come home. But when you're talking about social media and branding, there's a lot of podcast shows that really want to cover that topic, and they have their audience. It's all about the audience, right? And so their audience can gain some strategies, or they can learn something, then they're going to have me on the show. So this particular book was a big game changer for me, because I'm getting booked on so many different shows. That's why I'm up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, because of the time zone difference. But yeah, that's the purpose of it. And for those of you out there that are listening and you are thinking about, gosh, should I write that book? Please do. Please do. It's not as hard as you think. I'm not even a writer. This is the thing. People go, "Wait, you've written 5 books." And I said, well, yes, but I'm not a writer. I'm actually a talker. I'm a speaker. So I do webinars and workshops, and I hold, lunch and learns. And so I take my content that I speak into the world, and I take that and I convert it into readable, enjoyable text and chapters and books and things like that. So yeah, that's my approach, because the idea of sitting at a typewriter with a smoking jacket and a scotch, just it's just too.
Christine, I've been sharing this a lot lately too. I'm working on book 4, and I don't identify as a writer. I've gotten better at the writing process, but like you, it's not just like sitting down and staring at a blank page. That's awful. I don't think anyone should do that. There's so many other ways to do it. But I almost didn't write my first book, because for several years I knew I had to write a book, because I was a professional speaker, and everyone was saying, you have to have a book, you have a book. They didn't say what to do with a book. They just said you have to have a book, right? It's a business card. But they said, you just wake up an extra hour too early, at like 5:30. And I'm like, you think I wake up at 7:30? I don't do that either. Like, no, I'm not wake. So I almost didn't write a book, because I thought the way you had to write a book was to get up early. I've written all my books between 9 and 1 a.m. Like, that's permission granted if that's who you are. You're like, you know what I mean? It works out. Hey, Christine, I want to come over to you because I'm curious, given what you have witnessed your authors do at Intelligent Inc., and I'd love to hear a little bit about the kind of authors you attract there. What were your metrics that you were going to be paying attention to, and did anything shift from the start of the process till when the book was actually out and it was like you actually had the book? Did something change about what you thought was possible?
I think, if I'm being honest, I probably was too focused on making the book great to be thinking about what happened beyond that. And I absolutely should know better because we talk to clients about that all the time. But I think there was, I mentioned the existential crisis before, and you guys just touched on it again. You were like, we've written books, but we don't identify ourselves as writers. Well, I do identify myself as a writer. So I'm like, gosh, I've got to write a really freaking good book here, because it just felt like it was going to be judged by a different yardstick to somebody else's, and my own harshest critic as well. So I think I was honestly so focused on just writing the book, finishing the book, prioritizing my own work as much as I do for clients as well, because I was still delivering client work in between, which was really or along the way, which was really challenging. I sat as part of, we have a small group coaching program called the Better Book Project, and I sat as a participant in that during the time that I was writing the book, whereas I had been a coach of it before. And so I was then coached by some of my colleagues and sitting alongside some of our clients in the participant chair. And, one of the key differences that I had to them was they were doing their writing time, and it may have been 5 a.m. or it may have been 10 p.m., whatever suits, lunchtime. Some of them carved out, a half day that they didn't do client delivery or whatever. And then they would do their writing time, and they would go back to their day jobs, which were coaching or facilitating or speaking or any number of other things, training, those sorts of, that's often the sort of range of our clients. And then I was like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to take my writing hat off, and then I'm going to go and put my writing hat back on. Like, it was the same pieces of my brain that needed to do my book and my work, which was quite challenging.
Yeah, I mean, your brain doesn't get a break. Like,
Yeah.
there's no like, now we're going to do a different type of activity. That is really rough.
It was sort of burning out the same mental muscles, but I distracted myself kind of from your question there, which was,
yep,
the metrics weren't well enough in my mind. We knew, though, full well that we weren't going to make our money by selling the book. So it was about how we leveraged it for the business, and it's done some great things in that regard in terms of opening doors. Definitely what we hoped it would from a reputational point of view. And I think the main thing, which I mentioned before, is I succeeded in kind of establishing my own voice within the business as well, which has been really useful for people to see where I'm coming from, what sparks me, and also the kinds of clients that I can best represent as well. So
nice. Awesome. Hey, Helen, when you were getting started writing a book, did you already know other authors? Were you part of a community of people that were writing books?
Yes, I am a past president of the National Speakers Association DC chapter.
Excellent.
So I knew all about speaking and the power and value of books. And it was so I'd been a collaborator in other books. And when I started writing my book, it was like, okay, you know what? It's easy to make time to write a chapter in someone else's book focused on a theme than to lay out your whole book. I'm also a manuscript preacher. So I have sermons, 20 years worth, all written out. Now, I still write them, but I don't use them when I preach. And I'm not a pastor. So as I say to people, I preach by invitation. But I still write it all out. And I get there and it's like, Oh, that doesn't work. I know what it is. I'm going to say something that's going to be relevant for the present moment, using a text, bringing ancient wisdom to the present day. That's how I look at it. So it was really, I know a whole lot of authors. The other thing was that I started collecting books that I liked by authors that I liked. And when I had a chance to meet the author, to have them sign the book. And that's a legacy I'm leaving to my nieces and nephews, so that who knows, they might really be worth a whole lot of money one day.
That's the
And
college funds plan. I love it.
that's right. That's right. It's a college fund plan. You got to let it marinate and grow.
Uh-huh. I'm also part of the National Speakers Association, and there are 17 associations around the world that focus on the profession of speaking. And I've been part of it for over a decade. And that's where I really got my early, messaging around you have a book, you have to have a book. And I also got the messaging to not focus on #1 bestseller on Amazon. And I think at first this was very confusing because I also heard all these people saying how great it was and then you go to NSA and they'd be like, oh, it's just a game. Like you do it 2 a.m. and it lasts for an hour to take a screenshot. And I think over time, what I understand is like, it's not a lasting victory. It's a fleeting one. It's a moment in time based on how many books are sold in that category for that hour. And this is why I have focused so much energy on the reviews, because they are lasting social proof. And I know that some authors don't think about reviews at all. It's just like an afterthought. Some are so focused on bulk book sales and, selling the book with a speaking gig or doing PR. And I just really feel like this launch piece is so important. In fact, I built a whole business around this launch piece because as a podcast host, and I guess, Christine, you might have experienced this too, you get a lot of pitches when you're a podcast host, and they almost all have a book. That's why they hired a PR company or a podcast placement company. So I'm like, okay, what differentiates you? And then I look at their reviews, and they have like 7 ratings and 4 written reviews on the book about networking. And I'm like, what? Thanks, Bob, for playing, but no, thank you. Like what? Yeah. So I really look a lot at that, and it's a couple of things that I focus on is, are you getting written reviews? And just I'm looking at Christine, your latest book. You're part of this last campaign with us, and so you got a bunch of reviews actually, and one from me. Look at that, just in the last few days. But you had some reviews before that, and the solid thing is having you have the same number of ratings as reviews. You have 11 of each. What this means is that people didn't just hit the 5 stars and like peace out, because they don't have to like buy anything or write anything to just do that. And I've seen people with like 142 ratings, and they are like, oh yeah, I have 140 reviews, and then you look and they have like 8 written reviews. I'm like, what? So that tells me that you really were making a plan to get reviews, and I'd love to hear why was that even on your radar? And are you trying, now that I've told you the importance of it, are you trying to do more of that going forward, I guess? And that, because then we can help you do it.
Well, it's really weird because it's difficult, even with having a podcast, as you know. It's you have people that pitch you to be on the show, and they're like, I want to be on your podcast. It's the same thing when I had a radio show. I want to be on your radio show. And I'd be like, well, okay, so does everybody else. Why do you want to be on the show? And then they would, and the problem is that a lot of times people don't even listen to the podcast, and they already are pitching themselves, right? 100%. So the same thing with books. And in particular, like with my books, I want those reviews because I want people to actually read the book and to give me that feedback. As society, as human beings, we are more apt to call up and complain, or write a comment, a complain, right? To moan about something. Oh, that restaurant was horrible. Oh, that movie was bad. That celebrity is this and that. And it's very rare that we actually do the positive. Myself, in my life, in my work and relationships, I always take a moment to talk to the manager and say the server was amazing, to comment on a podcast if I want to be on the show or if I don't. But if I find something interesting about it, then I'll make note of it and I'll give them a 5-star rating and I'll say this podcast was, hilarious, whatever. And so I think that's kind of my hope for humanity, is that we do take the time to actually reward. You have no idea as an author how it feels when you do see that 5-star review and the words that are used, not just the stars. So it's the same thing as a podcast host. You want to see those ratings and those reviews because it gives you feedback as an author or as a podcaster.
I think all content creators globally wish more people hit reply on an email and said, I loved that email, or reached out after listening to a podcast episode that they were a guest on, or they were the host of, or the book that someone has poured their heart and soul into, saying, oh, like these stories in your book really resonate with me and I feel more confident doing X now. And in preparing to launch your book, I found studies that said more than 90% of people read reviews when making a purchasing decision, which we all kind of nod along because we are part of that 90%.
We do that too.
Yeah. But I couldn't find anything saying that anyone does it regularly. Like writing reviews regularly is so rare. And I found a really funny example for the book. So on Amazon.com and on Target.com, there are reviews for toilet paper brands. 5,000 to 15,000 reviews, which sounds like a lot until you realize how many millions of people use toilet paper. And so when you put it percentage-wise, very few people. There are people who will review everything down to the toilet paper brand that they use, but I have yet to find a person who admits to being one of the people who do that. So what we also then learn from this is that a very small percentage of people have an outsized influence on the buying habits of everyone else who comes after them, which is why aiming to get even 20 reviews, which does take a little effort, can make a big difference for a book. And when I work with clients, I'm helping them get 50 or more. I just actually realized a client that I helped launch at the end of last year hit 100 written reviews and 101 ratings, which I just saw today. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. I don't think she even realized it actually, because she just been streaming in slowly but surely. And that's social proof, but she also engaged with her network, her likely prospects and her referral partners. So all the conversations, because you got to ask more than once, you got to send reminders, you got to do nudges, you got to make it simple. All of that meant ongoing conversations with the people in her network who also did care about the book. And that's leading to other opportunities. So, when you're talking about trying to get on more podcasts or stages, like this is part of that. Christina, I'm curious, as you work with your authors, since it sounds like you are attracting people who are writing a book for their business goals as speaking workshop presenters, trainers, facilitators, and the like. Have you, I know you asked them about strategic questions about why they're writing a book. I've talked to Verity, your colleague, Verity Craft, about that. But how do you approach this review piece? Because it's like everyone says you should do it, but no one knows how to do it. It's like so hard to do. So how have you mentally prepared authors for the fact that they're responsible for like this phase of that marketing plan?
I think we front load it into the writing process still, because we're encouraging people to ask for endorsements. So we get reviews even before we get people getting reviews, even before they have finished and published the book, and sort of say the more the merrier. There's lots of things that we arm them with to do that, like a bit of a template, but also we've got a template for them. But the key part that we talk about is personalizing it. I used to work in PR for a while, and I had obviously a relationship with lots of journalists, and their pet peeve, which you just echoed, Christine, was people who were pitching them a story who had clearly never picked up a copy of the magazine or the publication at all. Like, you could look at the name of it and just think, this is about logging or something, and it's nothing of the sort. So, they're pitching a travel story for the no travel section that you do not have. So I think the key bit that we said in the proactive approach for reviews when you're actually targeting a specific person, you want to give that you want them to give their feedback, is to make the link of relevance for them. So look, tell them exactly why, based on what you can see about what they're doing and thinking and sharing with the world, why does your book or your ideas matter to them, and therefore exactly what you're hoping for. That's sort of the endorsement piece. And then when it comes to reviews, we typically get people to build that into a system, really. So, if you've got a nurture series or something going after a book's purchased, that's typically the place that our clients would ask for something like that or encourage that.
Yeah.
And I think we're used to, as consumers, we're used to getting that too. Like the amount of products I've bought recently where those retailers have incentivized writing a review. I think I love the idea that we should share that stuff more often, but I'm more, as an author, I more often received a direct email or LinkedIn message from someone who had read it. They hadn't put it on a review site or anything, but they sent it to me directly. So that was the other piece, was turning that background and saying, thank you, that's really kind and amazing. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Would you mind posting it here and having a link of where they could put that? And for us, actually in New Zealand, it's not Amazon as often. There are other places that Kiwi consumers would look more often, but Amazon's obviously one of them.
Yeah. I think that's also tricky because when I work with authors that are outside the United States, if their network is also outside the United States, there's a high likelihood that the Amazon account that they have not been using. And if you haven't spent $50 in the previous year on that Amazon account, you can't leave a review. And the workaround I have for this, Christina, is that I actually have sort of 5 phases to the launch: the building the invite list and getting people to say yes to being on your launch team, then giving them the advanced reader copy and some review prompts before the book's not published yet, collecting reviews via a Google form. Again, the book's not published yet. And then if they do run into problems during the soft launch between publication and 2 or 3 weeks later, when we have the big reveal launch day, if they can't get it on Amazon, which is where we're focusing our effort, at least I have their text. And so I can then reach out to them and say, could you put it on Goodreads or a LinkedIn recommendation, or let's make a social post, or can I make it an endorsement on the Amazon book page? Or, there's a lot of different options, but all those options kind of are gone if you don't have that text for them, because then you don't even know they tried to put it on. So it is a little tricky. I've had clients collect 68 reviews and get like 44 up on Amazon because they're in Germany. And, it's just like a different market. But those other 20-ish reviews got put to good use and everyone felt happy about their contribution, and it still helped the author out tremendously. So I think what we're getting at here is you have to have a system, you have to have some consistency, and you have to make it relevant. I love what you're saying, Christina. What is the relevance of this book to that reader you're reaching out to, or the potential reader? I think that's true for all of us. Helen, I'm curious, beyond reviews, there are lots of marketing strategies out there. And the one I want to ask you about in particular is how you move volumes of books, whether it's for money or you were giving them away for free. You want to get your book out to as many people as possible, whether it's bulk sales or collaborations, giveaways. I'm just curious, like, what have you found that's been really effective at helping you get your book into people's hands?
What I have found has been that when I accept speaking engagements, to ask, may I sell some books? And I also offer, I'd love to do a drawing that someone will win a book, and always have books with me on hand. So that's been one way. The other has been any type of event that I may be doing. I'm certainly going to have some books there, and getting into an author's corner or whatever. My sorority, Delta Sigma Theta, just did this is their 10th year. They've had a Delta's authors corner or something.
Oh, nice.
And a lengthy process to go through. Oh my God, I was like, really? What the hell they wanted all this stuff for? Anyway, I went through it. I never even got a formal, oh, congratulations, you made it into the Delta Authors Tour. And someone hits me up on LinkedIn and says, hey, I know you were in the same sorority. Congratulations. I see you're on Delta's authors tour. I'm like, oh, thanks. I made it. So it's whatever way that I can find to get it out there, adding it to author to my LinkedIn profile. It's not easy and it's not organic. It is definitely intentional. And you don't know what you don't know. So this has probably been the most challenging part of the journey since I finished the manuscript
Mm.
before it went to print. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of times authors talk about writing a book like running a marathon. And I say, well, here's the thing. A marathon runner, when they get to the finish line, can stop. And if you stop when you get done writing the book, and that's all you do, like you don't have a book to share, no one knows about it. So it's more like a triathlon. And the first leg of a triathlon is the swim. And when you're done with the swim, which is writing the book, sopping wet, you run over to a bike. And then you go bike for some long, horrible distance. And then, which is the, editing and the formatting and the publishing. And then you run a marathon, which is the launching and the marketing every day that ends in Y. And if you only focus on the swim, you're not going to be good at the other two parts. You've got to have a balance. And it's different. You might need different resources, different team support. One of the things I love, the sort of a byproduct of collecting those reviews in advance via Google form, is that it buoys the spirits of the author at a moment when they're kind of like tanking a little bit because they poured everything into a book and so far no one knows about it. And they're also feeling a little anxious about telling people about it because they want it to work so well. And so those first, 10, 12 reviews that come in, and they didn't cheat off each other to write the review because there's no public reviews yet. These are legitimate, honest reviews. It makes them feel, oh, wow, people want to see this book. I now want to get this book out further. So I think it actually keeps them going. But yeah, I agree. It's not easy. And I think what you're getting at is we have to think really creatively about different opportunities, email signatures, LinkedIn, going back to an alumni group, right? Like those are all creative ways you've got to follow through. Does anyone here do any kind of awards in order to get some visibility? Christine?
Not book, not so much book awards, but everything that I sign up for, I have the book being in there. One of the I do a lot what Dr. Helen does with networking events and things like that. I'll actually just bring copies of my book and I'll just have them on the table and people will look, and I don't even say anything. I just have them on the table, like if it's a dinner or it's a networking event, and they'll look and they'll go, oh, what's that? What is that? And I go, this is my book, and they'll pick it up and they'll play with it, and I've got like a hardcover version and I've got the paperback version, so I'll bring both because some people like hardback, and so they'll play with it. So that's one way, and they'll buy them right there on the spot. They'll go, oh, I want to give you money. Okay, after this speaker. So we'll do that. But I also use it as a lead magnet, and I've never done this before with a book. If I go on a show, on a podcast that has a very big audience, or the audience is exactly my clients, what I'll do is I'll say, I never do this, and I never do this. But for your listeners, I would love to gift them my actual book. It's absolutely free. And I said they could go to Amazon and pay me $24.95 for the hardcover, or they could pay me, and I say you can go and give me money. But if not, they just go to this link and they can actually get it for free.
And you're delivering the digital version to them?
Yes. Yes.
Brilliant.
I'm not mailing them. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And so the host loves it because they are feeling all great because their listeners are getting something. I'm promoting the title, I'm promoting the book. And people, in order to get that book, they just need to put their email address and they come into my database. So that's what I've done. And again, I've never done that before, and it's working. So
that's really smart. Yeah. I, in the process of making my most recent book, I just counted up. I think I have somewhere between 12 and 14 pieces of bonus content that I have to finish creating. It's like it's growing and growing and growing. Like this happened for my last 2 books too. Like the idea of like, how do I take people from reading the book to engaging with me and getting in the lit? Like what is the mechanism? And I think this is one of the pieces that authors need to be thinking about, which is actually how we're going to close out. I'd love each of you to think about a piece of advice that you would share, particularly with an author who's writing a book to grow a business, speaking, coaching, consulting, facilitating, workshops, etc. So for me, it was like really being clear about adding lots of value that you could get as bonus content in order to attract them from the page into the pipeline, into the conversations with me that eventually, hopefully, then become a sales call at some point if it's a good fit. Christine just spoke, so let me go over to Christina. So Christina, tell us a piece of advice you have for someone. I imagine you have quite a few, given this is the work you do, but if you could synthesize it to 1 or 2 things that you think people overlook.
We use an analogy a bit like your triathlon, Robbie, but we say that launching your book is like your wedding day, and you actually need to then stay married to your ideas. And we're like, and anyone that is married realizes that takes work, and sometimes it's hard, and sometimes it sucks, and sometimes you don't want to. But you have to, what you put into your relationship is going to dictate what you get out, and the same is true of your book. So that is one of the pieces. I think one of the key things, though, that we learned now that we've implemented into the work we do with clients as well, is ensuring that they get really clear up front on how they want the book to help them in their business. So yes, absolutely, think about the impact that you want what you're saying to have on readers, but also get clear on what you want your book to drive to and how you're going to leverage it. So that's one of the key things. And don't leave building an audience until after you've written your book as well. Do that along the way.
My second book really speaks to that. It's called Small List, Big Results, Launch a Successful Offer no matter the size of your email list. And the premise is that no matter how big or small your email list is, and we almost all want our email list to be bigger, your network is always bigger than that. So it's really about activating that network, building that audience before you try to sell something. And it's the basis of my launch process as well. It's like really leaning into this idea that you've already met 80% of the people that you need to know to be successful. So how do we wake up your network? Hey, Dr. Helen, let's come over to you. What's the piece of advice you would share with folks?
The piece of advice I would share is really investigate what is the behind the scenes piece to writing a book. You can write the book and be done and think, oh, yes, I'm done. And that's really where the work begins. And your publisher, your book coach, they can say these things to you before that book is written. And I'm going to tell you, it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other until you're done writing that book. And I remember when I got the first copy of my book, not even ready yet to look at it, I was just like, oh my God, this is my book. I wrote this. And I was so ecstatic. And I said, okay, great. Now I can just move on to the next thing. And I'm thinking, yes, there's someone out there. I was going to apply to be a speaker somewhere with my book. And they were like, well, who's your publicist? Publicist? I thought somebody, I don't have a publicist. And I stopped that in my tracks. So I would say, go and find out the long road to becoming a #1 bestseller. And what does that really mean? And so I'm in that phase right now of learning and relearning and learning how to take on those things that I don't like to do and finding other people to help me do it so that I can get it done. But in this day and age, if you're not out there, you're not out there. And so you've got to be out there on social media.
Yeah, it's about sustained success, not just like for the hour, but long-term discoverability, visibility. I love it. And Christine, advice you would share with someone?
Well, first of all, don't listen to that little voice that says, that imposter syndrome thing of oh, who am I to write a book and who's going to read it? Nobody wants to hear from me. Just shush that. because that's ridiculous. If you're passionate about something, it doesn't matter if you're passionate about gardening or vegetarian food, whatever it is, you have the possibility to write that book, and it's a great experiment for you to do. I believe another thing you can do is in that process. It's kind of like bringing home the puppy, right? You're all excited about your book. If it gets out there and you're on Amazon and you're like, oh my gosh, I got my brand new puppy book, and we're going to feed it and we're going to love it. We're going to take it for walks. And then after a while, a couple months go by and you're like, walk by the puppy book and you go, well, I got to see what's coming up next. Maybe I'll get another puppy dog book. But the thing is that you do want to nurture it, and you can do that in a lot of different ways. You can create a podcast show about your book, right? You can have guests come on the show and relate it to something in your book. Another thing you can do on social media, which you have to be a really good, a good reader, a good narrator, is read parts of your book on, in a live, do a Facebook Live or a TikTok Live. The other thing is that I highly recommend, and I haven't done it yet for this book, but I'm going to, is create the audiobook version. It's so much fun to perform your book, and make sure it's your voice. Don't have somebody else do it, because they're not your personality. They're not your style. Make sure that you actually do it. And if you need help, I can show you how to do that.
That's amazing. Yeah. These are all fabulous tips. I love it. So, Christine, how can people find you and follow your work?
Christine or Christina?
Christine.
Me.
I know these two kisses.
Yes, they can easily find me by going to expertauthoritycoach.com, and they can reach out to me if they want to have a free strategy session. I'd be happy to talk to them and get to know what book they want to create, but what kind of podcast too.
Brilliant. I'm going to put all the links, by the way, to your books, your socials, your website, all at bizbookpubhub.com. Christine, thank you for that. And Christina, tell us how people can find you and follow your work.
Probably LinkedIn is the best spot, actually. LinkedIn or our website. We've got to sign up to newsletters that we send out there, or just articles and interesting thoughts and stuff. So,
and you have a really fun website, intelligent.inc, and by that it's INK, which for a publishing related company is really fun. Intelligent.inc, as in INK.
We do have to explain that often. Just
well done. I love it.
Without the second E.
Yeah. And Helen, how about you? How can people find you and follow your work?
Well, there's always my website, drhelenholton.com. And I appreciate Christine's comment. I learned long ago that I am my brand. And so when people say, what's your brand? I might have a logo, a slogan, or whatever, but I am the brand and I use it. It started out to be my name. Quick story. And when I put in GoDaddy, helenholton.com, it was taken. And I was dumbfounded. I was like, there's another Helen Holton in the world? You got to be kidding me. So, of course, I had to go there and see who this other Helen Holton was. But it taught me an incredible lesson. Thank goodness I had a doctorate. So I said, well, let's try Dr. Helen Holton. Lo and behold, it was available. I said, how prophetic is that? Because when I walked across the stage to get my doctorate, the university president says, you may now refer to yourself as doctor. And I chuckled under my breath saying, oh yeah, okay, right. Until that moment came that I could legitimize that and say, I have the authority to call myself Dr. Helen Holton. I put it everywhere because it is my brand.
You worked hard for that. You deserve it.
Worth it to get recognized. Hey, I'm going to put all the links, all the messaging that we just talked about at bizbookpubhub.com, where listeners can find all the show notes for our episodes that come out every Tuesday and Thursday. Incredible content in all these episodes. You're going to love it. In fact, at that website, bizbookpubhub.com, you can also find about 24 experts, our hub partners who support authors on their journey, writing, editing, publishing, and marketing a book. An invitation to join me at one of our monthly virtual networking events for writers, authors, and speakers, or to sign up for the Kindle cross promotion campaign that I run a few times a year, and more. There's actually more than that I can not even remember to say here at bizbookpubhub.com. Just go there, check it all out. We would love to see more of you. And panelists, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been really wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a
Thanks,
blast.
Robbie.